we've been filming this doc since 2017. We started piecing it together more so towards the end of that year, late 2017, early 2018. And I've been a part of a group called Film Shop, and it's a collective where other filmmakers come together and critique. Joseph is in the back snapping. He's also a part of Film Shop. We critique each other's work. Cheyenne right here, she's also part of Film Shop. We critique each other's work on a weekly basis. So we submit pieces of work anywhere from 30 seconds. Some people have submitted hour-long pieces, and we constantly give each other great feedback. And we take it's a wide range of perspectives on your storyline in your documentary. So the past 6 months, Graham started the organization, but I'm like a senior. I've been in there for 3 years now, maybe 4. I can't remember right now. And the past 6 months has been the most intense journey out of all of the seasons because we're close to the finish line. And we've been running for so long, we got used to it, but it's that feeling when you see the end, when you see the light at the end of the tunnel, your body starts going, oh man. So that's how I feel, and watching this story and editing it and playing it back, being a part of this journey, it's a beautiful journey that I've been on. I'm so happy to share it with all of you, and I'm so grateful for the last 6 months because I'm finally seeing it all come into fruition.
Talk to me about your, a lot of people that, like obviously your parents and your friends and many of whom are here tonight, are a big part of this film. So like, what is it like to kind of, I know from the beginning you weren't super excited about being in the film yourself. Talk to me about incorporating your friends and your family into a very personal story.
So here I am, fresh out of college with a journalism degree, which I roughly used at Bronx Net. And I interned for Graham at Leave It Better. And I learned so much about agriculture and doing what's best for the community, the environment, and this planet through Graham. And at that pinnacle point in my life, just doing documentary work, working at Bronx Net, I saw a story in my own community. And I pitched at the end of the internship, I kind of pieced together a little trailer, and I sent it to Graham, and I'm like, look, let me know what you think about this. And he looked at me, and he was like, this could be a full feature. We got something here. And I'm like, you sure? And I started filming it, and he's like, you need to be more personal than this. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you need to be in this film. You need to bring your friends and family in this film. And I fought him. I really did fight him on doing that at first. But then the more I got involved with the story and the more I saw how important the story not only was for the community, but for myself, now I can't see not being in the film. Now I can't see having my friends and family in this film and sharing their stories and the story of my community, because 75 Park, the original title, was one of 35, and now it's Latin for one of many. Our park is symbolic of all the small playgrounds throughout New York City, questionably this nation. And I think that putting this story out there will show everybody that and show the truth behind what really happens in small neighborhoods like ones like mine. So to answer your question, it's beautiful, and I love having my friends and family in this film.
And I guess the last question before we'll get to Q&A from people that are from all of us here in the room is what do you, after seeing this cut, it's a little bit, maybe this is the hard question for you, but like, what are you feeling? Like, what do you, is there something that, you feel like this hasn't been told, we need to go out and get this, or you feel, what's, I know it's very sudden, that like it just happened, but what's your initial reaction to like the room and how it felt?
I have to give a big shout out to Film Shop right now, because even though this is my first official screening, I feel like I've been prepared for this moment, thanks to everyone else that's in Film Shop with me, as well as the luminaries. So what was going through my mind as the screening was taking place, a few luminaries and other film shoppers has always told me, when I'm at a screening, you've seen your film so many times, don't really pay attention to that. Pay attention to everyone's reactions to what's going on. Pay attention to when they're not looking at the screen, those moments when they lose attention. That's what I was doing. That's why I sat all the way in the back. And a lot of the moments that touched me, I saw it touched all of you too. So I really feel like after this, we're close to home, man.
So yeah, let's open it up for some questions and thoughts. Like what
So we have a wide range of audiences here. We have people from my community, people from New York City. We have editors, we have filmers. I'm happy to answer any question, post-production, production, story, characters, people that I might consider in film, past, present, future, anything like that. So please ask away.
Thomas.
Hey, you remember my name? Thanks. Alright, so basically, I just found out about this man called Robert Moses today. I wanted to ask you, how long did it take you to actually know about this person?
Robert Moses, that guy.
Yeah, that guy.
I had no clue who he was up until I started this film journey. And I'm very close with a lot of my high school teachers and my high school community. More than half of them also did not know who he was. They've heard his name. There's a beach named after him. There's a parkway named after him. There's a community named after him. You know how a lot of people say, and I'm not that guy. I'm not putting that thought out there. Like, in regards to, if I could take anyone out, I'll take out Hitler. A lot of people don't realize the impact Robert Moses had. One of the most interesting facts, besides what I shared in this film, he drew up the first blueprint for Project Housing. The original projects that were built in New York City, when he created those layouts, they were shared in Chicago, they were shared in Detroit, they were shared all over America. A lot of what he did here, and there was a lot of, not a lot, I'm not even going to say that. In regards to just an economic standpoint, what he did moved the economy forward, but it also took back everyone else besides like 10%, 2%, 5%. So there was so many other options he could have went. He went with the fastest alternative, which destroyed a lot of people's homes, a lot of people's communities, and a lot of people's lives. So that was the hardest book I've ever had to read in my life, and I didn't even read it. It was straight audiobook. The audiobook is 10...
So long.
Times 10 hours long?
I think it's 65 hours long.
65 hours long? Yeah. So it was a long book. But I am glad that I read it because the truth might hurt, but I'm happy that I know what really happened to my community. Great question.
I had to ask one.
So, congratulations, first of all, on what I feel is really touchingly crafted and beautifully edited personal story. But you take it in a trajectory that starts at a point, covers the bases, drops down to do the research, comes to conclusions. But I feel like it's the opposite of actually wrapping up a story, and you just said you feel good because we're almost at a wrap. I don't see it as that at all. I actually see it as you're having crafted now the introduction to a bigger story. And what my question is for you is, in a perfect world, what do you see this documentary 75 Park enabling other people to envision, or what do you see happening from your neighborhood out into the rest of the world?
That is a very great question. And the answer to that question actually lies in the question you asked. I said it feels like a wrap because of the journey I've been on. The film itself, I quite oftentimes compare this to the documentary Gasland. And I don't know if how many people saw this. It's by Josh Fox. And it's a documentary about a man whose family built a home on a gas line, and randomly his family got a check for about like $100,000 from the government. And what they wanted to do was take his home away and started a fracking project so they can acquire gas and sell it to America. Instead of taking the money, they actually brought a camera and started documenting. I went on a similar journey just with this park. It really only started off because I just graduated from college, journalism degree, working at Bronx, understanding how to do news packages, and my park is closed. So like, that's everything that was happening in my life at that moment. And I didn't do this with no other intent than probably creating a short and putting it on social media and sharing it with my community. That was it. So the journey I went on, I am still on. It is not done. And I do not have the answer to your question, but I know as I continue down this path, that answer will be very apparent to me. Any other questions? I'll take the one all the way in the back, and I got you now.
So first of all, fabulous job.
Thank you so much.
I'm director of a high school dance program. So,
What's the name of your program? Shout it out.
Science Skills Center High School. So I work with a lot of kids that come from like homes. So you highlighted the mother that had her son shot in the eye and really touching deeply. I can definitely see this like airing on PBS 13 on Sunday. It's very, very beautifully done. So excellent job.
Thank you. It
My
means a lot.
question for you is, how did you pace yourself emotionally as you were filming it? Because when you talk about things that happened when you were growing up, and especially like the things that are happening to the children, and especially hearing that mother's story, like what was it like to say, okay, I'm gonna film it, and then like take a pause and say, okay, how do I breathe this in, and then what's gonna come out of me next? So how did you pace yourself emotionally as you were filming?
So just to clarify your question, are you specifically asking about the edit and how you viewed it, or are you asking about production when I was in the moment filming it before I started the editing?
When you were in the moment filming it.
So, great question. Lisa Ortega is the lady you're asking about. My best friend, Luther Ware, was her next door neighbor. So everything that happened in her life, I knew real time as it was happening. So by the time I was filming this documentary, I knew I wanted to incorporate her into the film. So reliving that with her was an emotional roller coaster in and of itself, and going to those hearings with her and being at those community meetings with her. But those emotions that you are asking if I felt, I was only revisiting as I filmed it because I felt it when it actually happened. And to be honest, there were a lot of the story that impacted me. We didn't incorporate her in this cut, but she was the other lady, Latinx woman that was at the hearing, that was talking about how her brother got stabbed and her sister got gunned down. Mm-hmm. That is actually the aunt to one of my best friends that I grew up with, Ulysses. That's Ulysses' aunt. And I had no idea that happened to his family. So that you'll get a better answer out of me. I had to take a step back because as my father, this is my father who's also in the documentary, expressed a lot of his memories were bad of the neighborhood, and a lot of the things besides Lisa's story that was described were very bad that happened in the past. That's just retrospective of the Bronx at that time. But to hear something that was like super close to home, that was fairly like, recent in this time, it's just I had to take a step back. And it's never good to hear these things that take place within a footsteps from your home, and especially growing up with a loving family like I did, and not really being subjected to those negativities, and knowing where you come from, because I'm from the Bronx, like no one ever lets me forget where I'm from. It's a shock. And how I deal with it is the strong community that I made this film for. I talk to people about it. I don't just hold that stuff in. Because I feel like when you hold that stuff in, it gets to you at one point. Mm-hmm. And it's good to have these positive outlets. This is mine. That's why I thank everyone for being here. And it's good to let that stuff out. So shout out to your dance crew. I feel like they all have beautiful stories, just as beautiful as my own. And they're there because they need that expression. And I'm thankful for you for being here and allowing them to use that outlet through you and what you do for your students. So thank you for that. Mike was next, and I got you. Go ahead.
First of all, great job. I remember when we first started this.
Yeah. By the way, that Bronx dance shot that I was cheesing at, it was his black arm. And I had to lower the audio because that was like my first week. He's like, yo, what are you doing? What's the camera? And he was like, oh, it's for your doc. I don't want to be in your doc. But he doesn't feel like that anymore.
It's great. It's good to see it come to actually almost completion, I guess you would say. But my question is, how do you know that you are, completed this film? Because you cover so much. How do you narrow it down? Because there's so many other stories that could be told. Like me, that's overwhelming. The amount of stories you could tell. And I'm an editor too, so I know you cut down so much. How do you know, okay, this is properly? How did you narrow it down to this? Those people you interviewed, the stories, all of that.
It helps having a wonderful team.
Well, Randy and Craig.
A lot of our team members aren't here right now, but those journalistic instincts I picked up from college definitely weighed in, but it is not the biggest denominator in this fraction. One thing Graham always told me was like, when it comes to editing docs, people are always afraid to let go of that one character. Me, I'm like, okay, fuck it, you gotta go. I'm like, okay, bye. Like, it was the truth for me. It was the truth that, and I felt like that at one point, it was on autopilot. Like the story was telling itself. You can when you're looking at the same thing for years on end, you almost feel when something's right. You're in a relationship. You know what makes that person happy. This is a person. I'm like, oh, you don't like this character. Okay, I'm moving you out. Oh, you're feeling this character. Okay, let me give you some airtime. And then it also helps having just other eyes view it. I'm in a very unique spot. I filmed it, I produced it, I edited it. Not a lot of people do that with docs because you're staring at it so much. And being too close to something, you're not able to see the full picture. It's that old saying, like, you're too close, you got to take a step back. I've had people in my team that helped me take a step back. I had film shop. I had people constantly critiquing my work and telling me, this character works, this character doesn't. And I didn't have that level of, the word just escaped me, but I wasn't too tied to the film to say, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Every time I got critiques on this film, I took down those notes, I listened to people. I said, okay, this character's not resonating with me. This character's talking too much. This shot is horrible. And I just kept adjusting. Always adjust and be very humble about your craft and know that even though you are telling the story, sometimes another perspective could go a long way. I just got my adjustments in. Enjoy.
Oh, so a quick question. And again, I got here late and I apologize for that. But what struck me is that it seemed like just in terms of the folks that were, using the park, I just had a question earlier. Were there people who were actually advocating for the park to be redeveloped beforehand or no?
Yes.
Okay, there was. Okay, so I'm just like, because I thought I missed it. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. That nobody was even, were they not invited to the groundbreaking or what happened there?
So in regards to the ribbon cutting and as well as the planning, my mom is very connected to the community. She talks to everyone in my neighborhood. CPI, City Parks Initiative, goes through 3 phases. I hope I don't butcher this. They go to procurement. I'm butchering it. Graham, help me out.
I think it was planning.
Planning, procurement, and construction. Thank you. So during the planning phase, apparently they put a bunch of flyers around the community. And I asked my mom, because she walks to work several times. She's always outside talking to people. Did she see any flyers in the neighborhood? And then I got plugged in with Partnership for Parks, and I asked them the same way. How were you getting this feedback from the community? And I think because of that, it left a bad taste in people's mouths.
Yeah.
They feel like they weren't a part of the planning phase, therefore they shouldn't be a part of the ribbon cutting.
Huh.
Now, that park had 1, 2, 3, 2, 4. So that park had 7 basketball hoops before the reconstruction and went down to 4. I can humbly say if anybody in my community was a part of that planning, it would either had 7 or more still.
Right.
So the fact that the basketball court's number decreased was already very alarming once I saw the end result. But it was just, we still use the park and we still love our community. We just wish we had a better say. And in this documentary, I wanted to get both sides in a very humble way. But that's still not the main focus. As I said earlier, this park is symbolic for all the other communities in New York City.
I mean, what's crazy about it is that park is a pre-existing park, and there's been a lot of, I was a part of it. Much of the work that went along on the Bronx River, where there were no parks, and now there are, and they were very, very, very focused on. We started them literally. They would not exist were it not for our input. And so the fact that the city went backward and didn't literally go to the community that was literally engaged with the park long before any of these parks were built. And I'm like, I love them, obviously. So I'm like, look, they're amazing. But that just seems, so to the gentleman who said like this is the beginning of the story, I absolutely agree, because they learned so much about working with communities through the Bronx River Park development. And then to find out they went backward, because I was like, wait, I don't understand. Like, how is it, y'all were there already. Like, how did it get to the point where you're like not even going to that event?
A lot of what you're asking me, I asked when I went to the community meetings, which were led by Partnerships of Parks. And it's so funny. More than half the organizations that were in that room are basketball led. They wanted to run a lot of basketball programs in the parks, but it's like they're kind of handicapped because they went from having 7 hoops to work with to 4, and they can only run like 2 full court games. Yeah, so it's a give and take when it comes to that, and that is definitely something that we want to explore.
I'm just taking notes right now on what Majora said, so I'm totally focused.
It is something we definitely want to explore in the future.
Yeah.
And for us, we did not move away from that one story, but along this journey, Graham and myself both realized that it's really bigger than our community, and unraveling what Robert Moses did to our community, as well as community like ours, is something we want to shed light to now, and then in the future get super hyper focused on our own community.
Yes, but that's why I'm like astonished, because I feel like there was such an amazing opportunity there, and if y'all aren't happy, you could have been happier, and there was literally a system put in place. All they had to do was follow it.
Yeah.
So I got my answer, and I'm less happy than I was before.
The procurement phase actually took place between, if I'm not mistaken, 2015 and 2016, which was my senior year of college. So I wasn't even in the Bronx when that was taking place. So by the time I got home is when they started undergoing the construction and then allocating funds to the separate parts.
But without your input.
All input was closed at that point.
That's bizarre.
Great question.
Wow.
Everything that just got said needs to go in there. Just like all of that. Because one of the things the only thing, and I've been in love with this project since I saw it for the first time. You know this. I was missing a little bit of, I hate this word because it's overused, stakes. Because what you just talked about is systemic and definitely will apply beyond this. Like, it's not too focused. It's definitely, it's right up there with the drilling deep into Moses and all that kind of stuff. But one thing I was wondering though, was there, especially because the first thing you see is like you walk up to the park and you're like it's closed, you don't know why. Was there ever a moment when you were worried that it wouldn't ever be done? Like, did it take so long to a point that, like, not only were they not listening to the community, but was it not ever going to happen? Like, because when you're like a kid who played in a thing and you see it as an adult and it's not there, especially the way this city is, you never know that it's not going to turn into just like a giant condo or something, like in the middle of whatever. So I was missing a little bit of that. Not that I need fear in a documentary, but like, I mean, that I was wondering if that ever crossed your mind. Now, if it didn't, then I don't want you to convince somebody it didn't happen. But I don't know if the community thought maybe it wasn't going to happen. Yeah.
So the question was, for those in the back, was there a fear at any point during the production of this documentary if the park wouldn't be done? And how can I express that fear? To be honest, it was never a fear of when it would be done. It was more so a fear of what it would look like. It's like your closest friend is gone. Like, that is, and my dad would always tell me this, when my older brother grew up in that park, it was different. So like, it was a big swimming pool there, above ground level swimming pool, and then right around the time I was born, they reconstructed and put the basketball on. So that was all I knew. And a lot of I went to PAL there, for those who are true Bronxites. I went to Yogi Bear there. I did everything up in that park, truly. So for me to come home and see that it's different, it wasn't a matter of when it would be done, because I didn't even care if it was going to be done at that point. It was like, will it look the same? Like, will I have the same feelings for it? Will I be able to have those same experiences in there? And that is what we linked on with the documentary, because that was naturally how I was feeling as I was filming. And that's kind of like the people I naturally gravitated to. Their concerns wasn't about when it would be done. Their concerns was more in a reminiscent aspect of it, of like thinking about how it was and what it could be. and why it's happening. So I think that's why we linked in that direction. And to answer your question, what's at stake, we kind of built out the Robert Moses angle. Like each film needs a villain, and we kind of built him to be that guy, which is super fitting. And we danced around other people who could possibly be a villain in this documentary, but that is something we have talked about, like what else is at stake for this doc. And there are scenes that weren't incorporated in this cut that you and Joseph have seen in Film Shop that we didn't put in, that we are still working out and trying to weave in here. But we could, I would love to send this to you and get some deeper feedback, but we could incorporate a bigger what's at stake, because we have
You
we
have
have
so
more
much.
stuff to put in. Yeah, we have a lot.
It's all good. That's the second part. It's all good. There's nothing weak. So yeah, it's all good.
Thank you.
One more.
I'm gonna come right back to you. I'm gonna go to Neville really quick in the back.
I just want to say this documentary left me very emotional. It was a very emotional journey. And at the end, I was just sitting there stewing in all this emotion. And I saw your call to action for the Parks Department.
Yes.
It was very clear. This is what I want. This is how it should be done.
Yes.
For your viewer, it's not very clear. And I think there needs to be a clear call to action, even if it's not for the viewer who lives in your community, but for, you mentioned Robert Moses's blueprints were then utilized as the cornerstone for the rest of the United States. So for viewers in Chicago and LA and Atlanta and anywhere else, Detroit, I mean, what should that call to action? Because now I'm ready to take action, but I don't know what to do.
I like that. And that's actually a great question, because especially now in a very social media age, when I made this, Instagram was just picking up. So now everyone's always looking at the user journey and where do I end up? Like they watch a video, okay, what's next? And I think we should definitely incorporate that in this film, because still when you look, while we were making this, another film, it's not called The Bronx is Burning, that's a different film. I forgot the name of the documentary, but it was a documentary about Robert Moses. Besides that documentary and The Power Broker, there's nothing else on this guy. Nothing else on this guy. At the time, Roosevelt was president. That dude feared Robert Moses. He was the most powerful man that wasn't a politician. Ever. Like he could do anything and no one would question him. And I feel like, especially now, there are things that need to be corrected, and what you're saying is how I want my audience to feel, how I want my community to feel. And it sounds like I need to step it up more in the leadership department and say, this is what you should do now. So I really appreciate your feedback. I'll let Grant pick the next few questions. I don't want no one to think I'm picking on purpose.
On that note too, like recently, some of you may have heard that Robin Rue Simmons in Evanston, Illinois, led the first successful campaign in American history for reparations for that community. And so we're in the process of contacting her to film with her and sort of get that journey started, as far as like, that should be that moment in Evanston should be the beginning of what you're talking about. Like, let's focus on, this has happened across America, and it's not fair and it's not equitable, and it's something that isn't many generations ago. It happened in the 70s. So there should be very clear legal pathways towards reparation in America, and that story, I think, is very inspiring and could be a place for us to channel our frustrations about what's happened, in this community and in communities across America. So.
Pick the next few questions.
My question was around that, but you kind of answered it for me. Yeah.
You're doing great already.
It's not a question, it's a comment.
He's next, but go ahead. No, he's next, but go ahead. Because I didn't forget about you.
No.
All right, go ahead.
It was okay, because I was going to say he exhausted my ideas, so I can't even say anything else.
Oh, okay. Damn, I love it. I love the energy here. It's really good.
But what I was gonna say is that even though it might not be a specific call to action, I think the main thing that it did is has people think, have conversations. I think that's the foundation right there. I feel like sometimes we get too focused on okay, what do I do? Sometimes just talking about it is good enough. So for example, just watching this, I was like, wait, hold up. This actually happened in my neighborhood like 10, 15 years ago. I didn't think about it until now. I was so happy that we had a big turf field. But they actually got rid of 7 basketball courts, the same thing. And then like we can't even get on that turf field, it's loud. We can't get on there's nowhere else for kids to play. So there's only 2 basketball courts now, and usually the adults take it. With the kids, they got nowhere to go. So now I think like the call to action for me is like, okay, start asking questions, why is this happening?
Yep.
You know, start praying about it. Don't let things slide. You know, about what's going on with people. So I think for everybody it would be a different type of call to action. I think you did your job right there. I think that's, you haven't done it all. Spawning ideas, spawning mindsets.
I think if I maybe one more question, it's 8 o'clock, and that we don't want to have it go beyond. We said 5 to 8, so yeah. Last question. Who wants to comment? Yes, sure. Or I'm sorry. Anthony raised his hand a moment before.
We'll take both of them.
Both of them, yeah. 2 more, yeah.
This is not a question.
Yeah.
If you want to comment.
Yeah.
It's more of just seeing the progression and just knowing. Me and Everett, we grew up in the same neighborhood. We grew up together, the same everything. So to just see it come up on film, I am blown away. I commend you, and I appreciate everything you do. Wish you nothing but the best on this documentary.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I second the motion, being his mom.
Go ahead, Andy, take us home.
Mine's a comment too. One of the things I love about this film is the point that it brings home about how a park, the prominence that it plays in a society. You know, one of the quotes you said was that a park is something that we all come to take a break. And one of the key, parts that you put in that film that is such a small part that I love is the shot of kids playing basketball in the park, because those kids are going to grow up eventually. But the one thing that everyone in this film, that one string that holds them all together, is that we all hold a sentimental place in our minds sometimes, and you seem to have found this place for a lot of people. And we as humans, again, life can be a little hard sometimes. We all have that sentimental, sacred place in our minds that we always come back to feel safe, to feel at home. Is this that place for you?
And I'm going to answer this question and also simultaneously piggyback off of what he said. I remember a conversation I had with Graham when he used to live in New York City and he's not here anymore. It was me and him in his apartment. We're talking about the film. We kind of use this analogy of it being a quilt. And we're trying to connect all the interviewees to each other. And we're connecting them to the park. Everyone here, you might not know it, whether it's a direct line or a line of a line. You're all connected to 75 Club. Whether you've been there before or not. My experiences has touched all of you. And because of that, we're all part of the same community. So to answer this question, yes. Yes, I want all of that. I want people to feel all of these things. And the biggest question I had to answer is, who am I making this film for? A lot of people who are in business, a lot of people who are creatives, you always ask who your audience is. And I always thought super local. And I would dance around with a lot of people that's been in the shop with me, as well as Graham. How can people outside of my community understand? And there was a good portion of these conversations where I'm like, I don't want anyone outside my community to understand. I just want my community to get it. And I feel like I've met a beautiful middle ground because it is for my community. But even though you're not part of it, after watching this, now you're connected.
Awesome.
Thank you all for coming. I'm going to hang out here for a little while. Have a drink with me, please. We're going to be outside. It didn't thunderstorm as bad as I thought. It's really nice out. So please come outside.